Hey, what is up, you guys? My name is Matthew, or the AK-47s if you're new to the channel, and this right here is my 2017 Ford Focus RS, my 2016 Triumph Street Triple RX, and my Honda Grom back there, my 2018 Honda Grom stunt bike. So today, what we're going to do is basically tell you how to put an exhaust on your Focus RS. Catback system anyway, not a full downpipe or any of that stuff, but a catback on your Focus RS. And it's basically going to be the same thing pretty much for every catback out there. But I'm just going to do one kind of like an overview. This personal video will be for the AWE track system, however. So after I tell you guys how to turn it, or how to put it on, sorry, I will put in some exhaust clips before and after, you know, idling, light driving, backfiring, stuff like that. So let's get to it, and I will teach you how to do it. Alright, so first thing as a disclaimer is that if you can see back here, I already have the stock exhaust off. I already have my exhaust put on the car, actually. If you come over here, I already have the AWE track system put on the car. So, that being said, I will walk you through the entire process, but when we actually put the system on, it was in this garage, pretty tight fit, and a lot of stuff back there, so not much room. It was also very cold and very dark, so it wasn't really ideal for filming how to do it. However, got my spotlight over there, and I got my phone for flashlight purposes, and I'm going to walk you guys through it. So first thing you're going to want to do, jack the car up. I only have one side jacked up at the moment. But whenever we did it, jacked up one side, jack stands, jacked up the other side, jack stands. We were working with jack stands the whole time, all four, and pretty high off the ground, try to give us a good amount of distance so we can maneuver underneath the car, stuff like that. So first thing you want to do, jack it up. Second thing you're going to want to do, if I can get this how it should be here without hitting my bike. So second thing is, your exhaust is going to be sitting on your car something like this. My garage isn't quite tall enough, but it's going to be sitting on there like that. So there's the mid pipe all the way up the front, comes all the way back, and then this part right here goes over your axle, out to the muffler, and then out the back of the car. So the problem is, this right here is welded. So you're going to need to cut in front of the axle, and I'll show you where that is on the car now. Right back here, you see right where that exhaust clamp is? Right there. So that exhaust clamp, basically right there is where you're going to want to cut that exhaust. Right, so like basically right where those two pipes meet, right there, right in front of that rear axle and all that type of good stuff, and right at the end of this really long mid pipe here. Okay, you're going to want to cut it right where that exhaust clamp is. So basically what that's going to end up doing is it's going to split the exhaust in two pieces so that you can take the rear end of the exhaust and lift it over the axle and out the back, and the front part of the exhaust, the mid pipe, you're going to be able to unbolt it and drop it straight down. And then that's just the only way you're going to get it off, is you have to cut the exhaust. So you will need the reciprocating saw would be number one choice. But if you don't have a reciprocating saw, you could probably use a hacksaw. It's just going to take you a pretty darn long time. And there's not much room underneath the car unless you have a lift, that a hacksaw will be the easiest option. So I admit the best way to do it is with a reciprocating saw. If you don't have one, you can always go buy one for like 15 bucks at Harbor Freight or 20 bucks at Harbor Freight. If you don't want to buy one, you can head over to like Home Depot or Lowe's or something like that, and you can use the tool rental service, and you're only going to need it for about 10 minutes. So if you go in and ask them to rent it for an hour, bring it back, use it real quick, just take it back, and you'll be good to go. So now on to the next step, which is removing the exhaust hangers. So before we move on to the exhaust hangers, you're going to notice here on the stock exhaust on the driver's side, you're going to have this little actuator here, this actuator motor for your exhaust valve. And there's going to be a little plug that plugs into the top of it here, which will be very easy to access when the car is lifted. And all you're going to have to do is pull a clip, pull the plug right out, and then that basically separates the exhaust valve actuator from the wiring so that that is free to come off. And what you're going to want to do with that is be very careful with it so you don't break it. And if you have an AWE system like I do, or some other systems that come with the little plug that basically plugs back into the car's wiring to fool the car to make it think like it still have a valve, so that you can still use drive modes, you're going to want to plug that in to the plug on the car, which I will show you now. Alrighty, so if we get down under here, you'll see where the wiring comes out right there, and then it comes up this way, and I have mine actually tucked up right in that little hole in the frame there, and I actually have it zip tied very loosely so that it just holds the wiring up into that frame area. And I already have the clip plugged into that, but it's a very simple thing. You just want to secure it and make sure it doesn't dangle and drag on the ground and all that type of stuff. So that's where that exhaust clamp goes, that I put it anyway. Alrighty, so if we get down under here, you'll see where the wiring comes out right there, and then it comes up this way, and I have mine actually tucked up right in that little hole in the frame there, and I actually have it zip tied very loosely so that it just holds the wiring up into that frame area. And I already have the clip plugged into that, but it's a very simple thing. You just want to secure it and make sure it doesn't dangle and drag on the ground and all that type of stuff. So that's where that exhaust clamp goes, that I put it anyway. So the next step after doing that is you're going to have to basically like release the exhaust so that you can actually pull it off. And what that basically means is exhaust hangers, which are these lovely red things here. So you can see that it's attached, I don't know if I can be able to do this with one hand, but it's attached on the black hanger right here, and it's also attached to your exhaust hanger right here. Okay, so the easiest way that I found to do this, because these are a pain in the butt to take off, is you're going to want to get an exhaust hanger removal tool. If you don't have one of those, it's still possible. It's just really frustrating. And basically, you're either going to want to take a flathead screwdriver and get inside of one of the holes and basically pry it a little bit to give yourself some space, and then use your hands and muscle it off. Or basically just use your hands and muscle them off to begin with. And they are quite tough to get off on some exhaust hangers, but you'll get them off eventually with enough manpower and just gripping them and just pulling away. So just get that one off, and there's another one in the same exact spot as this one on the other side. You want to get both of those loose, and then you'll have, I think, 2 more exhaust hangers after that. Alright, so now we're under the car. So the back of the car is towards you guys, front of the car is up my way. So back there, whenever I told you where to cut the stock exhaust, right where that exhaust clamp is, so right here is where that exhaust clamp is. Alright, so from that clamp there, you're going to want to go right here, and there is an exhaust clamp right there that you can see as well. That one is a little bit easier to get off than the ones in the back. This one didn't take very much effort really at all, but that one, if you are under the car and you don't see it, can prevent you from pulling the rear of the exhaust off. And trust me, I forgot that it was there, so we were yanking on the back of the exhaust trying to figure out what the exhaust piping was caught on. Turns out it was still hung into place right there under the car. So you're going to want to remove that one after you remove the 2 in the back by the exhaust muffler. And then you're going to want to remove this one, and then there's one more which I'll have to reconfigure the light for, and then I'll show you where that one is. So now towards the front of the car, this right here, this big clamp right up there, is where your catback is going to connect to the downpipe right up front. So working from front back, right in the middle here is going to be your final exhaust hanger. It's going to be right there. And again, this one is not that big of a pain in the butt to remove. Still a pain in the butt, but not as big as the ones by the muffler. So once you get this one, the one by where you cut it, and then the two in the rear, you are good to start removing exhaust pieces. All right, so now you've removed the back piece, so the back half of the cut, I should say, and now basically all you're left with is the stock mid pipe right here that comes over my head. So once you removed the back piece, you're going to have this mid pipe here. It might hang down a little bit. So what you're going to do next is the very front clamp that I just showed you where it connects to your downpipe. So this clamp may be, if I sit it this way, it may be oriented a little bit of a different way, but the clamp, I think on mine it was over here, not on the right hand side. I think it was switched. So it was over here, and basically all you need to do is loosen this nut right here all the way off the bolt, and then this clamp is actually from stock. I don't know if you can see that. It's actually bent a little bit as they tightened it a little bit too much, so that the clamp part here on the bolt actually started to bend, you know, over the threads pretty much. So it could get stuck even when you loosen this. It may not get any looser. So basically you're going to have to take a screwdriver in between the bolt and the exhaust and just pry those two clamps apart, like the two clamp ends. You're going to have to pry those apart. That was by far the most frustrating thing that I had to deal with when taking this exhaust off. Was underneath the car. I didn't really have a lot of room, and trying to get that clamp to spread apart enough to get the mid pipe out was really a pain in the butt. But with enough effort, you will get it done. There's really not a trick to it. You just kind of got to get something in there and pry them apart and make sure you don't lose this spacer and these two parts of the bolt that will wrap around this, I don't know if you want to call it like a flange clamp. You don't want to lose any of those, because I think there's a piece at the top, there's the bolt piece here, the spacer, and the nut. So you're going to want to make sure you don't lose any of those pieces. But then once you do, you're going to pry that apart, get this pipe out of that clamp, and then the entire mid pipe should fall out, and you can just take it out from under the car. So now what you want to do is basically reverse the process. And you're going to want to start with the mid-pipe section that we just did with the flange clamp that you had to pry apart. You're going to want to start there. And basically you're going to take your mid-pipe or your resonator or whatever piece it is on the AWE system here. It is from here, this resonator, to the mid-pipe and downpipe clamp flange deal. So it's just this little piece here, okay? So you're going to want to take that and you're going to want to bend this clamp. Again, you're going to want to pry it apart because the exhaust pipes, they both have little lips. And you're going to want to get the lips of the piping inside of that flange clamp there. So you're going to want to pry it apart to be able to get the lip inside of it. And then once it's inside, the clamp should clamp down over the lips of the exhaust and then hold it in place. And then basically what you want to do is make sure you have the orientation of the two little, I don't know what you can call those things there, the two little spacers, I guess, or the two little like hangers, I guess, whatever they're called, on the bolt. And then you're going to want to get your spacer and your nut, and you're going to want to snug it up. You don't want to tighten it all the way. You just want it snug enough to hold the pipe. And then what you're going to want to do is get the rest of your mid pipe here, this part, which on mine goes from the place where you cut the original exhaust all the way up to that resonator. And you're going to want to put that and that pipe together and clamp that down just snug enough to hold it together. And then when you get back here, that's when you're going to want to take the rear section, the rear piping, and you're going to need to go over the rear axle the same way that you went out with the original piping, and then you're going to connect it here at the place where you cut the original exhaust. And you're going to want to cut it right, or not, sorry, you're going to want to clamp it right there at the cut point. And once you get that clamped down, basically after that, depending on your system, which let me get out of here again. So at that point, depending on your system, it should clamp up right behind where the old muffler was. Mine does not have any mufflers, so mine clamps right there. And then this part right here is the part that goes over the axle and connects to that mid pipe right before the front axle there. So you're going to want to get this all situated and aligned and connect the rear muffler part, or the rear part of the exhaust here that comes out of the car. You're going to want to connect that there, and then basically make sure that whenever you have your exhaust tips on, like so, you're going to want to make sure that they're level, you know, like they're the same kind of height on the car on both sides, right? And you're going to want to make sure that they're basically the same distance out of the bumper, however you want them to be. You're going to want to make sure they're basically like the same gap. And you want to make sure everything's aligned, everything's fitting properly, nothing's rubbing, nothing's touching, stuff like that. And once you have that done and all of the clamps are good to go, you're going to want to go back down and snug up every single clamp that you can. And underneath the car, on jack stands, time from jacking it up to putting jack stands under there, to cutting the thing, and then removing all the hangers, removing the piping, replacing the piping, putting the hangers back on, clamping everything down, getting fitment just right. If you do it all in a fluid kind of operation, you should be looking at around an hour install maybe. If you have limited space, kind of like I do here, you should be looking maybe an hour and a half, just because you kind of got to work your way under the car a bunch, and you kind of got to find areas to like, which is the best area to try to work on this part. So it gets a little bit tiring, and it gets a little bit tedious when you do it, but all in all, extremely easy and straightforward install, and the results are just incredible. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and cold start my car, and I'm going to do some exhaust clips between the stock exhaust and my AWE track system that I have on my car. Personally, I like the AWE track system because it has a very deep tone to it. It's much deeper than all the other Focus RSs that I've heard, as well as the pops and bangs on the Focus RS with the track ignition on there is unbelievably loud. It is unbelievably loud, and it sounds so good. So good. But has a little bit of decel drone, but I'm coming from a fully built Corvette Z06, and loud things do not bother me at all. Would 110% still recommend this exhaust if you're on the fence. The drone really is not bad, and it's only on decel. When you're just cruising, it's like almost dead quiet inside the car. Sounds fantastic outside the car. Once you get on it, everyone knows you're on it. And then when you're decelling, it does drone a little bit, but it's definitely not bad. So let's get you guys some exhaust clips, and then that'll be the video. So I want to thank you guys for sticking with me through this install. I know it's going to be longer than all the other install videos on YouTube, because I tend to go on and on and on and on and on about things, but appreciate it. Hope it helped you out. And it should be a relatively similar install for every exhaust out there. Just depends on, I guess, the reinstallation process, but your exhaust should come with instructions or something like that. So with that being said, here's your exhaust clips. I will see you guys next time. Peace.